A valley of Israelites held its breath as the Philistine giant stepped forward. Across the ravine, Goliath moved. Like something too large to belong to the world of men, his armor caught the sun. His voice rolled through the air like thunder. No one answered him. No one except a boy who still smelled of the fields. David stood with 5 smooth stones in his hand. He had chosen them carefully from the stream bed. One for the giant, the others for the brothers who might come after. He thought ahead, not out of bravado, but because that was what shepherds did. They planned for what followed. He had killed lions and bears before, but never a man. He was not fearless. His chest was tight, his hands trembled. But his fear had shape, and he knew how to live inside it. In the hills, after fear had been a companion, not an enemy. The thing that kept him alert when the darkness shifted and a predator came. It was familiar. Somewhere inside him, the words he had heard since childhood stirred. Shavak bet maratz, Adonai mimo. Be strong and courageous, the Lord is with you. He mouthed them silently. The rhythm steadied his breath. When Goliath laughed and called him by a dog, something changed. The boy's fear burned down to anger, not at the insult to himself, but at the mockery of the God whose name the giant defied. That anger was clean, cold, righteous. The fire of faith turned outward. David bent his knees, set the stone in the sling, and felt the rough cord bite against his fingers. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The shouting, the wind, the heat. There was only him, the sling, and the stillness of faith that had no room left for doubt. He whispered once more, "The Lord is with me." Then he moved. The sling whirled, the stone flew, the giant fell. In that instant, between fear and faith, between trembling and triumph, David became the image of every human who stands before something impossible. This was not only the story of a shepherd and a giant. It was the story of what happens when weakness meets purpose, when terror yields to trust, when a fragile heart chooses belief. It was the beginning of his kingship, but also the beginning of a truth that would follow him and all of us for the rest of our lives. Well, welcome to Whole Bible Study with your host, me, Inoue. Today we're taking a special look at the emotional arc of one of the Bible's most remarkable figures, King David. Not only what he did, but how he felt. We're asking the question, is David the archetype of being human before God? And if he is, what might that mean for us today, who still want to walk faithfully with the Lord? When the dust settled and the echo of Goliath's fall faded into silence, David's story truly began. The boy from Bethlehem, the youngest of 8 sons, stepped into history not because he sought glory, but because God chose him, and he answered. Only every motion that followed, every triumph and failure unfolded under the first divine initiative. David was the Ben Ha-Shemini, the 8th son. In his world, that rank mattered. The firstborn inherited honor, the youngest tended sheep. Yet again and again, God overturned human expectation. Jacob over Esau, Joseph over his brothers, Moses, the reluctant speaker, leading nations. God's vision of greatness has never looked much like ours. Rabbinic tradition remembers David's beginnings as almost shadowed. Some texts even suggest that his birth carried scandal, that he was treated as an outsider within his own house. Whether literal or symbolic, it points to something true. David knew what it meant to be unseen. Before he was king, before he was warrior or poet, he was a boy who kept watch under open skies. His only company, the flock, the wind, and the silence of God. That solitude shaped him. The shepherd's life was not gentle. Cold nights, wild beasts, and long hours of isolation. It was there he learned vigilance and courage. It was there he learned to listen inwardly. The Psalms echo that training ground. Quote, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you." That's Psalms 56:3. The boy who spoke to sheep learned how to speak to God. And that is where we first see what makes David the archetype of being human before God. He is not perfect. He is responsive. He listens. He struggles. He fails. And still he turns toward the voice that called him from the beginning. When David rose from shepherd to soldier and from soldier to king, the distance between the pasture and the palace was not only measured in miles or years, it was measured in heart. Kingship did not transform him overnight. It tested him. Power, as it does to all of us, revealed where faith ended and appetite began. At first, David's heart remained tender. He refused to harm Saul even when Saul hunted him like prey. Quote, "I will not raise my hand against the Lord's anointed," unquote, he said in 1 Samuel 24:10. That restraint was conscience, not cowardice. Yet, over time, conscience gave way to complacency. The shock of Bathsheba's story is not its scandal, it's the distance between the shepherd boy and the man who arranged a soldier's death. The rabbis say God told David, quote, "Had you been in Saul's place, you would have done worse. Had Saul been in yours, he would have done better." Unquote. Barakot 10a. It's not condemnation, it's compassion. Even the greatest are fragile. Nathan's words, quote, "You are the man," unquote, 2 Samuel 12:7, split his life in two. David's reply is simple, quote, "I have sinned against the Lord." No excuses, no royal defense, just surrender. Rabbi Yohanan called this, quote, "the greatness of repentance," unquote, that David confessed without delay. And in that instant, half his sin was forgiven. Teshuvah means to return. It's the Hebrew word for repentance, but it means more than saying sorry. It's the act of coming home, of realigning the heart with God after it was or has wandered. Teshuvah doesn't erase what was done. It restores what was broken. When David confessed, it wasn't the sound of defeat. It was the sound of returning. The consequences of his choices remained. The loss of his child, the rebellion of his sons, the fractures within his house. Yet even in grief, David prayed. The rabbis tell us that his harp still played even when his tears fell upon it. That persistence, his willingness to sing through sorrow, shows us something essential about faith. That a heart turned toward God, even a broken one, is still the truest measure of devotion. The young boy who once faced lions and giants now faced himself. The greatest battle was never on the field. It was always within his own heart. Time had stripped away his armies, his crown, and his strength, but not his God. Through every fall, every failure, every return, God had remained at his side. Not because David deserved it, but because that is what a loving father does. He stays, he waits, he welcomes his children home. David's story reminds us that holiness is not the absence of failure. It's the courage to rise after it. As life shows that God's choice is not a reward for perfection, but a partnership with potential. And that repentance, though it cannot undo the past, can heal what lies between us and the divine. When we look at David now, not the boy, not the king, but the old man, we see that the real crown was never gold. The real crown was clarity. Clarity about God, about love, about himself. His life ends where every human story must, not with certainty, but with faith. And perhaps that's why David remains the archetype of being human before God, because he reminds us that every one of us lives between promise and imperfection, between calling and consequence. Like him, we all stumble towards grace, learning as we go, that the same God who called us at the beginning never stops calling, even when we're too weary to answer loudly. When we think about David's life, it's tempting to remember only the victories, the sling, the crown, the songs. But the deeper story is relationship. It's about a God who never lets go and a man who never stops reaching back. David's story is our story. It tells us that the Father's love outlasts our failures, that divine mercy doesn't wait for us to become worthy. It meets us where we are and walks us home. If this study helped you see David in a new light, or reminded you of God's patience in your own life, I'd love to hear your reflections. Please comment, please subscribe, and please share your thoughts below. And as always, thank you for joining me here on Whole Bible Study with Tad Inoue. May you walk forward in grace, knowing that every step you take towards God is already met by his love. We'll see you in the next chapter soon.